And it is time for our newest feature on Morning Focus, and it is on housing in Clare. And over the next 12 weeks, this new feature is going to deliver sustained, in-depth reporting on housing in County Clare to provide clarity, context and accountability. So each week, we will examine a different aspect of the crisis, from supply and pricing trends to planning permission barriers, social housing allocations, mortgage access and the role of sustainable rural building, answering the key questions. And for our very first week, we are going to focus on housing in rural Clare. And we're going to talk now about housing in rural Clare, and joining me in studio to do just that is Liam Browne of REA Paddy Browne in Ennis. Liam, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for coming in. And also with us is the Mahara Fianna Fáil councillor and chairperson of the Rural Development SPC, Pat Hayes. Pat, good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks very much for being with us. We'll get the ball rolling with yourself. In terms of rural Clare, how would you describe the current housing market, and how has that changed over the last 10 years? I'm just thinking, did COVID play any significant part in where it's currently at?
Well, I think COVID influenced people's thinking about housing versus employment. And this home to work has been an important influence in purchasers. Like, from a COVID point of view, properties had probably increased by well over 50% since COVID times. The biggest difficulty we have in Clare is, I suppose, Clare is probably one of the countries that has the least few housing stock in the country. Supply is influencing prices, location influences, but I think the biggest impediment at the moment is affordability.
Are you finding that that's leading to people moving out of more rural locations, west and north of the county, and moving to more urban areas like Shannon or Ennis, or if pricing comes into it?
I think there's a balance in that. But some people, because of specific requirements, be it health, age or something like that, may move from rural to urban. Again, it all depends what type of house type and what level of bracket in the marketplace that you're talking about. Sometimes people who would have never looked at rural are looking at it because of affordability. The other reason is people are looking at it from a lifestyle point of view. Do they want a larger site? Do they want a bit of space? Connectivity then to employment centres, infrastructures are an important factor. And then there's others that just want peace and quiet. Yeah. So there's no golden rule for it. But rural properties, as a consequence of urban prices increasing substantially, it is having a knock-on effect on values out there and demand.
Pat, Liam mentioned a pertinent word there, infrastructure, and I was going to ask you what your take on the current state of rural housing in Clare would be. And I wonder, because it is an issue that comes up so often, infrastructure, wastewater, electricity and so on, and how the lack of them can be impediments. Are they causing issues in terms of how you see the state of rural housing in rural Clare?
I suppose if you look at the county, in a sense, that there's growth down the centre vein of the county. We have, in our own electoral area out in East Clare, you have Cllr, Crusheen and Quinn growing at a huge rate. And then just move a few miles down the road into other areas like O'Callaghan's Mills and Fecal and Easter. There's no development, and even Scariff, Tuamgraney to that level. I'm just making those as examples. It's very similar back West Clare and back probably into North Clare as well, because people are actually moving where there are houses. I suppose then there are 52 settlements that don't have infrastructure, they don't have sewers, they don't have the basing, so it doesn't allow for development. Look, there is a proposal there for developer-led sewer schemes and things like that, but that has to go through. We had that in the past and it left a lot of issues and challenges. But we also have a lot of villages and towns that have infrastructure and we don't have growth in them either. And I think that's really what the challenge, from my view, is. Why isn't that happening when you have the infrastructure and you have some lovely villages and towns out there that have no growth, and people are moving? I think sometimes people move to services.
That was what I was going to ask you. These places that do have infrastructure, is it a lack of services that is leading to
sometimes
that issue?
It's work related, and more times if you're buying a house and you're coming into Ennis or Shannon or Quinn or that, you're using the services of childcare, you're using the services of healthcare, you're using all that centralises it, and that's one of the challenges really for rural communities, because services are moving with and then you lose shops and you lose that when you don't have the business. And it all comes back to if you happen to basing housing growth in the area, and people don't see the value in having services or businesses in rural communities if you happen to grow the population. And we're seeing it in several schools and education facilities where schools are struggling to stay open now. And then you have the complete imbalance where in schools they haven't capacity. So there's a lot of not thought out thinking in my mind in planning in how we've done this. We have reacted in certain ways. You'll put in childcare, you'll do this, you'll put in services. But ultimately it's the people are deciding. And because of the cost of maybe a standard house of 350,000, 400,000, two people have to be working. So they actually have to have childcare. They actually have to have doctors. They actually need to live where people might mind children from as well. And there's a whole lot of other issues that come into that. And then we're also educating an awful lot of people that are now seeing a different side of the world. And particularly in the farming community, we're seeing a downturn in people staying in farming, and the age profile of the farming community in itself is moving an awful lot of people into part-time farming. So you can see a real challenge coming in rural areas at the moment. But there are some huge things that are making big changes as well. We'll just say the Cllr scheme for single rural houses, where over we're the fifth highest in the country, and I think 500 applications have been approved to get funding to upgrade old housing as well. That is a real opportunity now in my mind that is something that has made a huge change here, and a lot of people are seeing an opportunity. You don't have the challenges of planning as much as the same issues if you're going into an old house, and you're also bringing life back to a community.
And just before I go back to Liam on that, do you want to see that rolled out elsewhere? I mean, the pilot schemes in Lisdoon, Varna and in Fecal are being very well received as part of the Ready to Build service site scheme. Would you want to see that happen in other places in Clare, that that it will beget more services and facilities coming to those areas if there are more houses? Can this help in that regard?
I think the new CEO of Clare County Council, Gordon Daly, has clearly made housing is the most important issue to deal with. I think projects and things like the Cllr for Lisdoon, Varna and Fecal are very much a template while we're building and proposing on council lands at the moment. I think we need to move further into the private developers and help them to develop sites as well, to give them a reason why they would go to the Fecals and to the Whitegates and to other villages that don't have growth, to try and encourage. We're going to have to do something to help developers move into areas that there is no growth. I think there is an opportunity to look at this and see how this works, because presently if you can get a service site that has all the sewers, water and light and all at a reduced cost, it really is attractive to people. Okay,
I'd be interested in an estate agent's perspective on all of this, Liam. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I suppose the one thing that I've seen more recently is under the derelict sites regulations and Clare County Council's efforts to bring disused properties into either be sold, be renovated and to be suitable for occupation. That has been a very positive approach by the council. I think in the last since 2022 there's been over 300 properties which were lying idle, and either by way of CPO or I suppose a little bit of push on behalf of the council with the owner, they're either being renovated or sold. And with the derelict site schemes that they have in the grants, it is appealing to parties to renovate from either an investment point of view and for their own residential. In relation to the rural areas, look, in the marketplace, you'll always find people have a pull to certain areas, and I find it a very good example is if you look at the development in Crusheen in the last 20 years, and again even in particular in the last few years, there's been over 200 new houses. By the time they're finished the existing development, there's probably going to be around 400 new houses within the centre of Crusheen. One of the attractives of Crusheen is connectivity between Galway and Shannon, and you also have all the main services there, and it has all this services, church, shops, GA schools.
And they're pushing for their railway station to be reopened, which would really add to that.
And it would add to it. But what you're finding is people that are outpriced at Limerick, outpriced at Venice and outpriced at Galway, they're coming to Crusheen and they're living. I find probably one of the, and again, it's a slightly, doesn't have the same infrastructure in relation to its connectivity road, but it would be a very popular residential area in Clare, and that would be the Rowan area. Rowan area has, like Crusheen, all the services. It has school, large school, church, shops, everything. But what's stigmatising any development in Rowan, and it has plenty of land suitable for development, is the lack of services. And I don't understand, this has been going on for 10 or 15, 20 years. I don't understand why that hasn't been dealt with. And it opens up land and potential affordability to the marketplace if it was, you know. And that's something, look, we can't do everything, but there is certain things I think that we could do to open up land banks. And again, I do see the local authority there, they are looking at opening up additional land, especially land zone strategic reserve, into residential to make it available within the marketplace, which is a very positive approach. But I think the provision of services with Cllr is, you can't have one without the other. A great example of that is what happened in Quinn. Quinn recently got an upgrade in sewerage. In the last 3 or 4 years, you've seen 2 or 3 developments actually taking place there. Prior to that, there was no developments in the last 15 years.
Pat, you're chair of the Rural Development SPC. What concerns you most right now in relation to rural housing? Is it vacancy, dereliction? Is it infrastructural issues? Is it lack of services? Or is it just a mixture of all of that creating the most throbbing in your temples?
Well, it's a mixture of everything, really. But I suppose ultimately, if we look at individual houses and planning permissions as well, that brings challenges as well. And I think to date, in a lot of parishes and communities, the single rural house has been the only opportunity, because we don't have the infrastructure in the small villages and towns, and the possibility of it is challenging. So,
do you think like village-led development is better than compared to isolated housing?
I don't think that. No, I don't think that. But there's a balance.
Right.
But we have a challenge trying to manage that as well, because you have linear development and ribbon development coming out of towns. The preferred area for most people to live is within a mile or two of a town or a village. And we've seen that in a lot of communities. But at the same time, the challenge is to try and keep that for locals as well, and at the same time is to get sustainability, to keep schools and businesses open. So it's a very challenging one at the moment, and I suppose for the main issues for single rural houses, really it's the policy issue and the county development plan, where certain of the county have deemed high pressure, which is not suitable for people moving in, and some areas could do with people moving in. And then we have other areas where we have designated land that doesn't allow you with designations to build houses, and you have road safety issues and you have percolation issues, and those are the main things that crop up every day for everyone. And it's very hard to say that very few houses go through in the first round. There's a lot of further information requests and challenges around percolation, around sight lines and all that. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. But a lot of people still want to live in rural areas. And if we don't continue to support that rural development and housing out in rural areas, we really won't have communities at all, because but it is that challenge where the younger generation are moving towards the larger area, towns where there is jobs and where there is services, and to try and get that balance is very hard at the moment. Which
is disappointing, Liam. If younger people are leaving their localities to go to those areas, you ideally want people to, I'm sure they would like to buy a house and, rear a family in an area where they themselves have grown up. Is that going to become more of a possibility in rural housing in Clare over the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, what can you see a lot of the issues, the stumbling blocks that both you and Pat have highlighted, being smoothed out or gotten over to allow first-time buyers, be they from elsewhere and they just want to move to a quiet rural area, or for young people from that locality being able to stay there and raise their family? How optimistic can they be about the prospects of doing that?
Again, I can't see all the issues being fixed in the next 5 to 10 years. There are certain sections that could make it easier. I do think the planning regulations and restrictions in certain areas is an impediment for people who wish to live in particular areas. However, I do understand there has to be some sort of governance on that keeps the control of the development. The biggest thing is infrastructural, transport, amenities and services. are they available? Sometimes you find in rural houses one of the biggest things that people look for is broadband. What is the capability? Is it high speed? Are they going to have interruptions? Because a lot of the people that are looking at rural housing, possibly one of them or both of them are working from home.
Just going to say that, yeah.
And it is a major factor. And I think Pat said it there, services either they need childcare, school placements. Is there availability of school placements in the area? Their connectivity to services. It's healthcare and all that. They're all little things that make a difference. Like if you're inside in the middle of outside in West Clare and there's no healthcare centre inside in West Clare, or it's 20-30 kilometres away, it could influence your decision. There can be a lot of things be done, but I suppose you have to try to prioritise what will have the best impact on increasing, I suppose, the supply of houses and reducing the demand. But in the current marketplace, with the level of properties that are on the market, coming on the market, it's hard to see that change in the next year or two.
Which, and in the 30 seconds that are left us, Pat, is a sobering thought. Some of those issues could be sorted out, or addressed short to medium term, but there's quite a lot of on that to-do list there.
I do, but I've actually sensed a different direction from our council and a different direction at government level. We have to try and take on all these challenges. We've had appeals on board plan all and all these things that are going on, vindictive challenges at times. We really need to straightforward, and we need to build standard houses as well, and we need to just build houses, whether it is modular housing or not. We just need to tackle it at a point where we can actually land 20 houses into a village and get it done. If there are 20 modular houses at the moment, we have to try and sustain communities as well.
It not to take years and years and years.
We need to get out of that. But there is I find it every day now that there's a change coming and there's an effort. Sometimes it's hard to get that through because people, I don't know, like I pass through some places and I wonder, by the time we get things done, the good has gone out of them. But we can't afford to continue the way we are. That's all I say. We need to make sure there are real changes.
The thing with modular sometimes, and again, they may be a short-term response to it. It is, I think, what has to be done. There have to be sustainable in the long term.
Yes.
That it is not just a short fix.
I'm sure that, but at the same time, there's opportunity as well. The sustainability at present, because if we continue in some areas, we lose everything because services won't remain. And it's a real challenge in the rural areas, in the rural towns and villages, and like whether we're building single houses or not, if villages in the area are not improving, and the business, if you lose a core business out of it, a shop or a pub or something like that, people move away then.
And those young local couples and first-time buyers I was referring to, I mean, they'd be more likely to they might chomp at the bit for a modular home because it gets them on the property ladder, and that initial phase of rearing a family can be done in there before they might eventually move on elsewhere.
Well, I think we really have to start thinking a little bit outside the box here. Like, we did react very well in terms of the Ukrainian crisis, and we got a lot of houses, and people are still going in, living in houses. We really need to make sure now that we change it all around, and we try and get our own country going and look after our own people. Because one of the challenges, I have 3 kids in that particular phase where they'll want houses, and I'm not sure how that will happen, but we need to make sure people like them, we can keep them in our country, keep our services, because if those people are leaving and move to our cities for jobs, the challenge is very much for rural communities, and that has a knock-on effect for the town of Ennis and Shannon and everywhere. If they're not living in the rural Clare, they're not coming into Ennis to service it either.
Well, you'd better hope they find housing, or you'll arrive home one day and they'll have changed the locks and that'll be them squatting in your place, right? We'll leave it there. Pat Hayes and Liam Browne from Morrisey, Paddy Brown, Ennis. Guys, thanks very much.
Thank you.
This feature, The Future of Housing, is funded by the News Reporting Scheme.